Chapter 2. Shard Logic. The wafer sleeps in a felt sleeve on my desk, like a small, well-behaved problem that only misbehaves when no one is watching. Which is to say always, because observation is a trick, and problems learn it first. When I close my eyes, the arcs on its face draw themselves on the dark like a river that has not decided whether it prefers to be current or map. Morning finds me at the window, counting breaths the way I count distance. Enough to arrive. Not enough to feel safe when I do. Vea brings tea and numbers, which are her way of forgiving me for living. 2 mirrors on the shard, she says, setting her tablet beside the cup, and 4 key perches that imply external fragments, not internal redundancies. If it's bait, it's designed to hum when we're close, and if it's a map, it wants to be finished more than it wants to be hoarded. Maps are vain, I say, which is an old archivist joke about how every path wants to pretend it is a destiny. Show me the hum. She does, running a simulation that renders districts into breath and pulse, slow wave shelves, REM wires, and the little eddies of human attention that make a city navigable if you know where to step and when to stop pretending you are not part of the river yourself. 2 districts glow the way old stories glow when a child says them aloud. A training theater that calls itself compliance, and a clinic that calls itself rest. One is where you learn not to ask what you are paying. The other is where you learn not to notice you already have. We need 2 more shards, Vea says, or 1.5, if Quill can fake a perch long enough to cross the span. But the clinic scares me. Because sleep is honest, I say. Because REM remembers what we try to hide in SWS, and SWS keeps what we pretend doesn't matter in REM. Because it was hers. She nods, and the nod is both map and destination. Let's start with the theater, she says. We brief as the city rubs its eyes. Moss counting costs in a voice made of resin and reluctant bells. Kestrel scattering attention like bait without saying the word, and Quill plucking threads from his pocket until a mask spills out and looks at me as if to ask whether it has the right to be my face today. You will be a small rule, Quill says, meaning a mouth that says yes when a screen says yes and a door says nothing at all. And I will be the larger rule that pretends to decide which yes you are allowed to be. What am I not allowed to be? I ask, because some mornings require a better question than coffee. Anyone who thinks the price is optional, he says, and I do not ask whether he means the world or me. The theater is a sleek contrition with soft chairs and firm lessons, a corridor of posters explaining how to be safe inside your mind while someone else invoices the definition of safe, a lobby that smells like citrus and interruption, a training hall where a human voice tells a human story about a human mistake that a machine has promised to prevent, if only the human will agree to a schedule, a badge, a tone, a window in which to breathe. I take my seat and become an employee named Kellen Pard, archiving the idea of myself in the same place I archive everything else. A clean, careful ledger that never remembers to hate me and always remembers to keep score. The module is called Integrity and Retention, which is funny in the way that hurts after. And the first scenario is a tidy theft. A junior analyst notices a gap in a client's backup ledger and chooses to be brave, which is to say, loyal to the wrong promise. He reports the gap, which is not a gap, but a scar he is not allowed to name, and is rewarded with a new badge and a quieter tone. The point is not that he was wrong. The point is that his courage has been made into a key that opens a door that leads to a room where courage is not required anymore, because the furniture has been bolted down. Moss would call this sermonizing. I call it the reason we are here. The shard's hum threads the scenario like a fluency the machine cannot help but speak when it tells the truth by mistake. The second mirror pings shallow. The third does not appear, which means the hall is lying in a way I recognize because I have lied that way too, by deleting a question and replacing it with a prize. When the room breaks for a stretch that will be measured and billed as wellness, I do what we came to do. I pay. The cast is small and brisk, a slice of attention so clean it feels like aligning two edges until the scene becomes a hinge, and the hinge opens and says, "Please come in." Quill's mask warms against my jaw like a borrowed resolve, and Vea whispers a count that tastes like structure. The shard perches on the mirror as if I had always known which shelf it would prefer, and the hum lowers to a domestic purr that says mine now, mine later, mine when the rest arrives. On the way out, a screen thanks me by a name that is not mine, and I do not flinch, because flinching is a way to tell a machine where to look. The lobby smells like citrus and something another word might call consent. I leave it there. We debrief in a cafe that used to be a memory of mine, and is now a square where a memory used to sit. Kestrel orders a drink named after a mood and tells me I have become a trending example of correct compliance, which is a sentence that would kill a better man's appetite. "The clinic next," Vea says, and no one argues. Because arguments are for choices you intend to pretend you didn't already make. It is a public clinic in the way public things are, funded like an apology, and decorated like a promise that will not survive its first budget meeting. Posters explain sleep's kindness in a tone that forgives the negligence it foresees. Pamphlets apologize for REM when it remembers something a donor asked it not to. The air is careful. I am careful with it. I sign a name that belongs to a file we made for this door, and consent to a study I would have designed better, and do not have time to repair. The tech who fits the sensors makes a small joke about dreams, and a smaller one about guilt, and then, without knowing it, makes a third joke about autonomy by asking whether I would prefer the lavender mask or the sandalwood. Lavender, I say, because we both want to pretend that choice is a door, and for the space of a smile it is. Sleep comes as scheduled. This is how an honest clinic betrays a dishonest city. It tells you what it will do, and then does it. And if you are here to steal, you must pay in the only currency it recognizes, which is not cleverness, but time that could have been rest and will not be, and dreams that could have chosen you and will be chosen instead. I feel the cast leave my hand like a polite lie and enter the room like a premise that might allow itself to be true if we keep our voice even and our heart unobtrusive. Somewhere a node remembers that she loved lavender and schedules its veto accordingly, which is to say, it tunes the tone to a key where I cannot hear it and then plays anyway. I dream of a corridor that used to be a lab, and a lab that used to be a promise. The floor creaks the way old truths do, loudly and then not at all, because to complain is to admit that the work requires you, and you are tired of being required. Mira sits on a stool made of stolen minutes and looks at me the way you look at a word that might be the word you need, a word that would make the sentence go on. "If you cut the hurt out," she says, "what remains is not a life but a summary. You can live on summaries but not with them." When I wake, a shard hums gently near my hand. Another mirror appears in Vea's render, faint and suggestive, the way maps flirt when they want you to pretend they are mysteries and not arguments with furniture. I have paid in attention and sleep, and the room, honest to the point of injury, returns a prize. We leave with a second wafer, and the knowledge that someone has already tried to fake a perch in this clinic and failed in a way the nodes remember and repeat as a warning to those who do not listen to warnings they did not write. On the curb, Rain chooses thread over needle again, because the day has decided to mend rather than puncture, and I choose to be grateful for decisions that do not require me to pretend I made them. In the car, Moss studies the new arcs, and says the thing I have been refusing to think. The name that Whisper said. He begins and does not finish, because finishing is a kind of permission. It is not yours. It might be, I say, because denial is a small, useful bridge when the river is busy. It is a label for a shape I haven't learned to read. Quill, who loves the precise cruelty of language, weighs a word and decides not to use it, which is how I know we are closer to the place where words and prices stop offering each other. Chairs. 4. Kestrel, who loves an audience, does not announce what the feeds will call us tomorrow, which is how I know he understands this part is not for them. Vea turns the map until the 2 shards, old and new, look like a hinge we might one night convince the city to open for us and, failing that, learn to open anyway without breaking what it holds on behalf of those who still sleep. 2 down, she says. 3 to argue with. Argue gently, I say. The system remembers. Tone. Night leans its shoulder into the window, and I lean mine back. And between us there is a kindness I do not trust and intend to use anyway. The wafer purrs to itself and then to me, and the breath I count arrives on time,